Today felt wrong, and not in the dramatic way, just the kind that gnaws at your habits. I woke to the phone alarm at 6:15 like always. The same dumb fading melody that I keep meaning to change. Padded to the kitchen in my socks, and found the coffee maker blinking clean, even though I cleaned it last week. The apartment was quiet, not peaceful quiet. More like the city was holding its breath. The building across from mine usually has a couple of windows lit by now. Old man Ramirez watching the morning news on full blast, the yoga lady with the salt lamp. But all I saw was a row of dark squares and one flicker like a TV trying to find a channel. I stood there with the fridge door open, letting the cold breeze hit my legs, and forced myself to do normal things. Coffee, toast, vitamins, water the spider plant that refuses to die. I texted Kendra, my daughter's mom, to confirm I'd pick up Lily at 6 for our Wednesday dinner, and I sent a good morning to Tori. The situationship I've been pretending isn't a situationship by calling her my friend from the gym. Tori sent back a thumbs up and a selfie with toothpaste foam on her lip, and I smiled because it made the room feel normal for exactly 1 second. On my street, garbage pickup is Wednesday, and the trucks usually rumble by like clockwork at 7. I was bagging the kitchen trash when I realized I couldn't hear them. The silence wasn't complete. Distant freeway, a dog somewhere. But the mechanical hum of a weekday morning just wasn't there. I took the bag out to the curb anyway. That's when I saw the van. It was a white box truck with no company logo, parked across from the HOA sign that says Walnut Ridge, a safe community. The back doors were shut, the driver's window cracked. The angle was wrong for a delivery, and it had this faint stenciling on the side, like something had been painted over. For a half second I thought it said Amael something. Then I blinked, and it was just a scuff. A man inside was on a radio, head down. No one else seemed to notice, because there was no one else out. My neighbor, Jared, usually does that thing where he hustles his twins into the SUV while apologizing to the air for being late. But his driveway was empty, and the twin scooters were tipped in the grass like they'd been dropped mid-ride. A streak of something dark ran down the curb near the storm drain. I stared at it longer than I should have, hoping it was oil. The group chat for our block was usually buzzing by then, with petty wars about parking and dandelions. I opened it and watched the little typing bubble pop in and out. Anyone else's Wi-Fi down? From Dana. No trucks yet. From me. Then 3 messages came in at once and disappeared. Literally blinked off the screen. When I scrolled up, the most recent one called the HOA president a garden fascist, and everything below that was gone like it had never posted. I laughed once because I wanted to, because the word garden and fascist together are funny, but the sound came out flat. I still went to work, because that's what men do in my family. We lace up and go. I work at Clayton Heating and Air, which is just me, 2 techs, and the owner who spends more time yelling at the radio than fixing ducks. The shop is 5 miles over on Route 38. A strip of nail salons and vape stores, and a pawn place, with a sign that reads, "We buy hope." Halfway there, my phone buzzed with one of those wireless emergency alerts, the kind that makes your heart kick. It flashed a gray bar at the top, then glitched into static for text. Just blocks of, like someone had sent me Tetris. It dinged again with an Amber Alert tone, and all it said was, "Test, do not panic, test." My radio was on a sports station. 2 guys debating which quarterback was a fraud, and their voices crackled into a FEMA monotone for a second before snapping back, both of them pretending it didn't happen. I started counting the cars, passing me going the other way. Not many. A school bus rolled past, lights on, empty. At the shop, the front door was unlocked and the lights were on, but the bell didn't ring when I pushed in. Rick, the owner, was at his desk with his reading glasses on the end of his nose, staring at an invoice, and didn't look up. I said his name twice. He finally blinked at me like he'd been underwater. "You hear about the plant?" he asked. "No hello. Just that." "What plant?" "The water treatment over on Maple. My brother says Homeland's sniffing around." "Why?" "Some kind of. I don't know. Don't repeat this. He's a dramaholic." We stood there waiting for the joke part, but it didn't arrive. An air filter leaned against the wall, had a smear across the plastic. I noticed the smear was rust-colored, Felt stupid for thinking blood. Told myself it was primer. At 9:30, my first call was a no-show. At 10, we tried to pull up the day's work orders, but the scheduling software spun and then logged us out. Server maintenance, the message said, and then the message turned into a 404, and then the browser said we were offline even though my phone showed 4 bars. I tried to text Tori about lunch, and the little green bar crawled, and then popped an exclamation point. I tried again with a dumb meme. Nothing. Rick told us to take an early lunch. I'm going to listen to the radio and get the real story, he said, like the radio was a person he trusted more than either of us. By then my insides were making a steady noise that only I could hear. Not fear exactly. Not yet. Just this running on empty feeling. I drove down to the strip mall for a sub and ended up just sitting in the car with the engine idling. Across the lot, there was a military van. This one wasn't painted over. It was fully marked with a green plate and everything. 3 soldiers stood in a triangle by the door, hands on their belts, not tense, but focused. People were giving them a wide berth. A woman went into the pharmacy and came right back out with nothing. A man in an orange hoodie stood outside the vape shop, staring at a point in the middle distance. His hoodie had little dark dots on it. I told myself he'd spilled soda. I called Kendra because if something disrupts the pickup with Lily, I need to know hours ahead or I look like the unreliable parent. She answered on the second ring, which is unusual. I could hear wind, like she was outside. Hey, she said quick. Hey, do we still have dinner tonight? I asked. I think so, she said, the think doing things to my chest. School sent kids home at 10. They never explained why. I'm at my mom's because the neighborhood was having something. People coughing. And a truck. What kind of truck? I don't know. Big. Loud. Okay, I said, because dads say, okay, when we mean 100 things. If you need me to come get Lily early. The line clicked twice. She was gone. When I called back, it went straight to that automated voice that makes me want to throw the phone. The caller you are trying to reach is unavailable. Like I was the problem. I drove back toward the shop and hit the 4-way by the elementary school just as the crossing guard walked out with her sign. She held it upright and then stopped dead in the middle of the white lines. A little kid on a scooter rolled right past her without looking, and I hit the brakes so hard my coffee sloshed onto my jeans. The guard tilted the sign like it had gotten heavy. She turned her head slowly, dizzy slow, towards my car. I recognized her, Mrs. Ellison, retired nurse, the kind of woman who brings cookies to the block party and only complains about mosquitoes. Her eyes didn't look right. They looked filmed over, like a cataract but wrong, and there was a streak at the corner of her mouth. She opened her lips, just a fraction, like she wanted to say sorry. But what came out was a soft, and a string of spit hung there refusing to fall. The kid on the scooter looked back at her once and sped up. That was the first time the word sick turned into something else in my mind. Not the flu, not COVID, not the stomach bug the daycare parents text about like a war alert. Something else. I was partway through, "Are you okay?" with my window halfway down when a hand smacked the glass. Not hers. The man in the orange hoodie. He had jogged into the crosswalk with this weird rolling gait, like he didn't trust his knees. His palm slid down the window and left a smear. It wasn't soda. It was too dark. It was too sticky. He didn't look angry. He looked vacant, like he'd lost the plot. He pressed his forehead to the glass, and I saw a patch of raw skin near his hairline, like he'd scraped it on concrete and not noticed. I don't think he even saw me. He was listening to something I couldn't hear. I pulled away, and the smear stretched like a comet tail. In my rear view, Mrs. Ellison was still standing with the stop sign, held a few inches off the ground like a shield she'd forgotten to raise. Back at the shop, the lights were off. The front door was locked, and there was a paper sign that said closed. Systems down. Back tomorrow. Rick's truck was gone. My key didn't work because someone had yanked the inside bolt. I stood there with my hand on the handle and realized I was sweating even though the day was cool, that my stomach was empty because I never ate the sub, and that I wanted to be at my place, with my stuff and my lists and the deadbolt I installed myself after the divorce. Home was worse. Not dangerous worse. Quiet worse. The white van was gone, and in its place was a different silence, the kind where you can hear people listening inside their houses. The HOA sign had a paper stapled to it suddenly, not straight, and I walked up to read it out of habit because I am, to my eternal shame, a rule follower. The paper said, "Warning, the first neighborhood is falling." Underneath it said, "Shelter in place. Lock your doors. Prepare to be self-sufficient for 72 hours. No seal. No authority. Just that. Someone had scrawled, "Who sent this?" across it in red Sharpie. Another hand had written "fake news," and then another had crossed that out and written "pray." I took a picture before I thought better of putting anything with my address on my phone. Upstairs, I tried to call Tori. Straight to voicemail. I tried to text Lily a heart and a pizza emoji the way we do. Green dot spun. I opened my laptop for work orders, and the hotspot couldn't find a network. The TV gave me a channel guide, but no channel. I said, "Hey Google," and the apartment didn't answer. I could still hear the freeway. I could still hear a dog. It should feel dumb to admit that I pulled the old duffel down from the closet like a movie dad. It's not like I'm a prepper. I've just been divorced long enough to know you keep a bag. Flashlight, batteries, bottled water, granola bars. A first aid kit I bought when Lily cut her toe at the pool and bled like a horror film. Duct tape. Knife. A roll of trash bags. I made a list on a whiteboard because lists make me calm. I wrote, food, water, tools, info, people. Under people, I wrote Lily in big letters and underlined it twice, and then felt dumb for writing my own kid's name like I needed reminding. From the living room, the neighborhood group chat started pinging again, a rapid-fire cascade that made me jump. The messages didn't disappear this time. They stacked fast, all caps and typos and half info. Guy on Fernway coughing blood. Anyone hear sirens? Why does the app say the hospital is capacity reached? Do I pick up my kid, or is school on lockdown? I need answers. White truck again. They're going house to house. Then a photo from Dana's second-floor window. Two men in fatigues with masks I didn't recognize. Not quite gas masks, but something close. Knocking on a door I knew. Mrs. Ellison's. The Mrs. Ellison from the crosswalk. A second later, a neighbor named Paul posted a screenshot of a news ticker. Localized communications issue. Do not panic. Under it, experts disagree on cause of illness symptoms, and then the feed cut to a cooking show. I keep thinking about what it says that I hesitated. You want to be the person who acts immediately. The truth is I stood in my kitchen watching my own hands, and, for a full minute, I argued with myself about whether locking my door would make me look crazy if this all turned into nothing by dinner. I could hear my ex's voice in my head. You're catastrophizing. And I could hear Tori's. You always want a map before you take a step. Then someone on the chat posted a shaky phone video from down the block of a man walking with his head cocked to the side. The way you hold your phone between your shoulder and ear when your hands are full. Except there was no phone. He tilted like a compass needle trying to find north. He walked into a mailbox hard enough to dent it, bounced, and kept going. The caption said, "He won't answer me. He just keeps listening." That did it. I dragged the hall table in front of the door. I locked the deadbolt and the knob. I slid a rubber wedge under the jamb because one of those DIY TikToks told me it worked. I shut the blinds. If I had plywood and a nail gun, I would have used them. But I settled for tape and an X across the glass because my granddad did that for hurricanes, and doing anything felt better than scrolling. I filled the tub with water like the disaster checklist says. I checked the flashlight. I put the kitchen knife in the top drawer because I don't like leaving knives on counters when my kid's around, even if she wasn't with me. I opened the pantry and counted cans out loud like a crazy person. 2 beans, 3 soup, 4 raviolis, 5 peaches. I cracked open a window an inch to let the air feel less stale, then thought about air like the problem and closed it again. I don't own a gun. I'm not judging anybody who does. I just never wanted one in an apartment with my kid. I did have my dad's old Louisville Slugger from when he coached my little league team, still stained with pine tar. I took it out of the hall closet and held it. The weight was good. It felt like high school again, standing in the on-deck circle, waiting for my turn, watching the pitcher and the catcher signals, and wondering if I should bunt. I told myself I wasn't going to use it on anyone. I told myself it was to break windows if I needed an exit. I mentally measured the distance from the couch to the back door and moved the coffee table to clear a lane. The power flickered, but it stayed. My phone vibrated on the counter, finally delivering a text from Tori from an hour ago. Gym closed. Weird. Going to check on my brother. He wasn't answering. I wrote back, "Do not go inside anywhere alone, call me, I'll come." And the typing dots appeared, then stopped. 3 times. Then nothing. I stared at do not, thinking about whether typing in caps makes it feel urgent or crazy. I finally sent another message. "Please just tell me where you are. I'm 5 minutes." The app took the message, but I knew it didn't go anywhere. I put the phone face down because watching the dots and the nothing was making me feel like a dog chained to a post. Sirens finally happened, muted and far, like they were in another city. A helicopter passed over once without lights. The dog I kept hearing started barking, and then yelped once like it had been stepped on, and then went quiet. My stomach made the same empty noise. I forced myself to eat a granola bar, and it tasted like sawdust, and I drank a whole bottle of water, and I wrote "eat" on the whiteboard because panic makes me forget things even monkeys know to do. Outside, footsteps. Not running, not rushing, just wrong pacing. A tap on the railing. The slow drag of something across concrete. I peeked through the slat in the blinds. The man in the orange hoodie was in the middle of the cul-de-sac, turning in a slow circle. He had a smear across his face now. His left hand hung like it didn't belong to him. He looked up toward my window and then past it like my apartment was a noise. He couldn't triangulate. 2 houses down. A front door opened a crack, and a woman whispered a name, and he snapped toward the sound so fast it made my head recoil. Not like a startle, like a magnet finding metal. The door shut again. He leaned his ear toward it and smiled, small and wrong, like he'd remembered a joke out of order. Then he started toward their porch with that same weird rolling step. I should have called 911. I did, actually. It rang long enough that I put it on speaker and set it on the counter while I picked up the bat. A recording finally answered with "Please stay on the line," and then switched to "All operators are currently assisting," and then the phone clicked and dropped back to the home screen. I called again. Same thing. The group chat pinged. They're saying pockets only. Pockets of what? We're a pocket, aren't we? Anyone with extra water? Someone knocked on my side door and then just stood there. I'm not proud of what I did next because it wasn't brave. It was small. I took a Sharpie and wrote, "Do not knock. Call first," on a piece of paper and taped it to my door. The call first part was me lying to make it palatable. No one could call. I put my ear to the door and could hear nothing, and it was the nothing that made my arms prickle. I texted Kendra again. "Please tell me you and Lily are okay." And after a long delay she wrote back, "We're at my mom's. Locking the doors. Don't come. I mean it. They're saying stay where you are." Then she sent a GPS pin that didn't load. At 3 in the afternoon, the power finally went. Not a flicker this time. Just black. The apartment exhaled a long breath I didn't know it had been holding. The hum of the fridge, the click of the thermostat gone. The quiet fell so hard I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. I stood in that dark room and thought about my kid's backpack and her tiny sneakers lined up by the door at her mom's house, and I thought about Tori's toothy kids she helps with homework on her brother's nights, and I thought about the way Mrs. Ellison always wears that visor even in winter. All those small, normal things are anchors. Without them, The day started to slide. I made a decision. It wasn't cinematic. It was a dad decision. A man who doesn't know what's happening but knows he needs fewer variables. It wasn't chaos. That's what shook me. It wasn't screaming and running and burning. It was people slowly noticing. A woman carrying groceries in one bag at a time to keep her arms free. A guy from 2 doors over who I've waved at for 5 years, but never learned his name, standing on his front step with a golf club, obviously embarrassed to be holding a weapon, holding it anyway. The man in the orange hoodie, now on someone's lawn, leaning his head against a fake rock that covers a sprinkler valve like he was listening to something inside it. He turned and looked at me, not because I moved the blind, but because somewhere in the house, my freezer made a tiny settling crack as the cold started to climb. He heard it. I know he did. He smiled again, that small wrong smile, and started up my steps, slow, listening. Not smelling, not seeing, listening. I backed away from the door because I didn't want him to hear my weight on the boards. I held my breath, so long my chest hurt. He reached the top step and put his ear to my door like he wanted to eavesdrop on my life. He stood there with his ear pressed against the wood and his hands limp at his sides, and I could see the shadow of his head under the frame. He didn't knock. He didn't try to handle. He just listened to the apartment listen back. I thought about the sharpened note on the other side of the door, "Do not knock. Call firsta," and wanted to laugh and cry because of the absurdity. He stayed there for a count of 45, which is a long time to count in the dark. Then, as slowly as he'd come, he walked back down the steps, paying attention to each creak like it told him a secret. I waited until I couldn't hear his shoes. I waited until the dog across the complex barked twice and went quiet again. I made myself breathe. I made myself stand up. I wrote on the whiteboard under people, "Torai," because I needed to keep the list true. I wiped my sweaty hands on my jeans and thought about whether I would be the kind of person who waits or the kind who moves. The phone buzzed on the counter, a sound that feels like life, and I lunged like a kid, and it was just a battery warning. 10%. That was the moment, the hinge. You think it's the van or the marching soldiers or the paper on the HOA sign, but it's not. It's the small choice in a dark room. I picked up the bat. I picked up the go bag. I turned the flashlight once in my palm and made the beam hit the ceiling, then turned it off to save power. I stood by the door with my ear pressed to the wood the way he had done to mine, and I listened to my neighborhood return my attention. I could hear the ice cracking in 3 freezers. I could hear a voice whispering through a vent. I could hear, and this part still feels impossible even now, the soft scrape of someone's nails on the outside of the window screen. Not testing it, not clawing, tracing the pattern like they were reading Braille. I unlocked the deadbolt as quietly as I could and slid the chain into place. I cracked the door half an inch. Cool air touched my face. The hallway light was out, so the only shape was the rectangle of my doorstep, and beyond at the top of the stairs, and the slow crawl of a single cloud across a sky that didn't care. I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. I shut the door again and relocked everything, and sat down on the mattress in the living room with my kid's backpack in my lap, because holding it made my hands stop shaking. I felt something like clarity for the first time all day. The first neighborhood wasn't sirens and fire. It was this, the wrong routine, the quiet trucks, the messages that vanish, the guard who forgets how to hold a sign, the soldier listening at a door, the man who hears a freezer before a voice. It was the way a block of normal houses taught you, step by step, to be afraid of sound. We weren't exploding. We were tipping. And I knew, in the same place you know when a storm is coming, that I had crossed from "don't be dramatic" into "don't be late." I wrote one more thing on the whiteboard with hands that had mostly stopped shaking. Stop waiting for proof. Then I underlined it, because some days in America, the only thing you can do is underline the thing you already knew and start moving chairs against the door. I didn't sleep. Not a second. I lay there on the mattress in the living room, staring at the faint ceiling texture while my mind pulsed with thoughts that didn't connect. Every tiny noise felt like the start of something. Pipes cooling, wind against the siding, a shutter loose on the neighbor's porch tapping in the breeze. But nothing prepared me for the new sound at dawn. A scream. Not a movie scream. Not the playful shriek of a kid. This one broke itself halfway, like the person's lungs ran out of courage before oxygen. Then another, and another. Then silence again, like the street swallowed it whole. I sat up so fast I grabbed the bat without thinking. My heart was coming up into my throat and staying there. The group chat was chaos, messages popping in faster than I could scroll. They're back. Someone help on Birch Street. They're not right. They don't move right. Someone posted a blurry photo of a man slamming his forehead into a storm door over and over while the glass shook. Someone else wrote, "They don't feel pain. They don't stop." A voice note came in from Paul. I played it. He was whispering like he had a mouthful of blood he didn't want to spill. "They're not sick," he said. "They're listening. Like they're tracking sound. Stay quiet." Then another noise cut through everything. The unmistakable, single-shot crack of a gun. Then two more. Close. Someone else was armed in Walnut Ridge. Someone already wasn't waiting for answers. I needed to move. Sitting here, waiting, was killing me minute by minute. Kendra and Lily were 5 miles away. Tori somewhere in between. And if the web of this thing closed before I reached them, no. Not happening. I strapped on my boots, filled my backpack, slid my dad's old bat through a loop I rigged with tape. Phone, flashlight, knife, water, spare socks, charger. I took one last look around my place, my life, and I locked the door behind me, even though I didn't think it mattered anymore. The hallway was still. I kept my steps soft. My door had scratches, new ones, near the handle. Had someone tried to get in last night? He was listening. The second soldier backed away slowly as the screams echoed again in the distance. Closer now. Hunting sounds. Clicking. Hissing. Feet moving too fast. So many. Too many. The soldier grabbed the metal case and ran straight into the tree line beyond the barricade. He never saw me. But I saw everything. This was real. This was here. This was now. I turned and sprinted toward Kendra and Lily, not caring if I made noise anymore, because now the clock wasn't ticking. It was gone. We were out of time. Something new appeared on the group chat as I ran. A warning. From a block number. No message. Just a picture. A map of our town. Red lines circling neighborhoods, one by one like a burning fuse. And text over it that didn't need explaining. Next, Willow Creek. Then Pine Hill. Then Staten Road. No evacuation. This is not an outbreak. They are not sick. Do not let them hear you. And at the bottom, one final line burned through my mind. The first neighborhood is falling. Do not be the second. I shoved the phone into my pocket. I didn't care what it took. Roadblocks. Whatever those things were. Even the government if I had to. I wasn't losing my daughter. Not to this. Not today. So I ran, heart racing, bat in hand, breath burning, toward whatever waited next. And I didn't look back. Because now I understood something about this. This wasn't survival. This was war. I ran the first mile on anger and the second on fear, and by the third my lungs were knives. And what kept me moving wasn't heroism or any clean idea of who I wanted to be. It was the math of sound and distance, and the picture in my head of Lily's small sneakers, by a door I couldn't open if I was dead. So I cut through backyards and kept my feet on grass instead of gravel, and ducked under swing sets, and apologized in my head to every homeowner who'd get mad if the world still had room for mad. And at the corner of Beach and 12th I saw Jared across the street, the neighbor who always hustled his twins into the SUV while making those breathless apologies to no one. He had one kid under each arm and a diaper bag banging his back like a metronome, and he looked at me with this naked relief that said, "You're a man I can hand weight to." And his mouth formed help, and I put my finger to my lips and shook my head because the twins were crying, and the crying was a flare, and we were already lit up, and I watched his face go from relief to something I don't have a word for, and I wanted to be someone who could save 4 people at once, but I'm not. So I gave him the only gift I could think of in a world where sound kills. I pointed to the drainage culvert I used as a shortcut in high school and made the hush gesture again, and he understood, and I don't know if they made it, and I hate that I chose my kid over his kids out loud with my hands. And 50 yards later, I reached the brick ranch where Kendra's mom lives and saw the blinds snapped shut at combat angles and the patio chairs stacked against the back door and a strip of duct tape etched across the glass, and I knocked in our old rhythm. 2 quick, 1 slow, 1 quick, and heard the deadbolt scrape, and then a chain clink, and then the door opened 2 inches and Lily's face filled the gap with this enormous relief that broke me in half. And she said, "Daddy," in a whisper that sounded louder than a siren, and I said, "Quiet in." The softest voice I've ever found, and slid inside like a shadow, and the first thing I did was put my ear to the door because the habit had become instinct, and it told me there were 2 sets of feet on the sidewalk, 1 heavy and 1 dragging, and I made a flat palm to the living room, and we all crouched behind the couch while the steps paused on the welcome mat, and the head turned the way they do now, not to see us, to listen for our breath, and I counted to 45 like I did in my apartment, and then to 90, because this one was patient, and then the steps moved on, and only then did Kendra let out the smallest laugh that was really a sob, and she hugged me with 1 arm, because the other was around our kid, and said, "You took long enough, like we were late to a movie." And we made a plan in 20 words, because that's all we had room for. No cars, no calls, shoes off, backyards only. Lily between us, my bat. Their kitchen knives, wallet photos left behind. And that's where the line shifted for me, because we had to pass Mrs. Vaughn's place, and she was 87 and alone, and she always baked cookies for Halloween, and always asked about Lily's grades, and I pictured her sitting in a chair with the radio turned low, and I knew if we knocked we'd bring a storm to her door, and if we didn't we'd leave her in the storm, and there was no version that didn't stain. So I told Kendra we move. And when Lily said, "What about Mrs. V?" I said, "We'll send help once we reach a safe place." Even though there was no help, and we both knew it, the lie sliding out of me like it had been waiting its whole life for this. And if you want a clean reason for why I deserve whatever you think I deserve, it's that sentence right there said in a kitchen that still smelled like cinnamon. We made it 2 houses under backyard fences and along hedges, and I thought maybe the math would hold if we kept it all quiet and slow. But 2 streets over a portable generator coughed to life. Not a steady purr. A stuttering cough that might as well have been a flare gun. And every head in a 2-block radius tilted toward it like a single neck. I saw them on roofs and in yards and pressed to glass. People who weren't people anymore, calibrating like microphones. And the generator belonged to a guy named Kent who always argued about HOA dues and loved his toys and had a smoker the size of a casket. And right now he was about to learn about hubris the way we all were, with teeth. And his wife opened their sliding door and yelled his name, and that was it. Noise stack on noise stack. The house across from them opened to shout, "Turn that thing off," and something gray and fast was already clearing the fence. We moved along the creek because water hides footfalls, and we stayed under power lines because the hum masked the rustles we couldn't avoid, and we kept a shade because I don't know if they see worse in light, but I felt less exposed under leaves. And that's where the last piece of the old world tried to reattach itself, because a voice from the culvert ahead said my name, and I brought the bat up, and then Paul crawled out of the pipe covered in grime, and a blood stripe across his scalp, and he grinned a little because we'd both lived long enough to make eye contact, and he said, "We can't go north. They boxed it with trucks like oak." But I saw a break south by the soccer fields. And then he saw Lily and said, "Hey kiddo," like this was a block party. And for a second it almost was, because here we were, 5 people who knew each other within 2 degrees, building a plan in the open like a picnic map. And then the world reminded us of the price of even a second of normal, because down by the softball diamonds a bullhorn crackled to life, with that pre-recorded emergency voice I heard in my car. It said, "Civilians do not." And the "not" got swallowed by feedback, and it said, "mandatory." And the man squealed, and that squeal was a spear right through the trees, and 10 heads in the tree line tilted, and every mouth in 100 yards smiled that small wrong smile, and a wave of them pivoted toward the sound, which was good. That was away from us. And then the bullhorn died, and the only remaining loud thing was us breathing and the leaves under our shoes, and the small metal zipper on Lily's jacket, and 5 heads tilted our way and started moving, and I told Paul field south. And he nodded, and that's when he slipped because the culvert was slick, and he put his hand out to catch the edge, and the old stitched wound in his forearm that he got last summer, helping me move a dryer pop like a button, and he made a sound my body answered to. And 2 of them broke off for us, and he looked at me and said, "I can pull them wide." And I said, "No." And he said, "I can pull them wide again," and there was an argument in it, just a math fact. And he took off perpendicular, crashing on purpose, testing how much noise it took to pull a predator off prey. And it took less than you'd think. And I watched him sprint along the creek bed, slapping water with his palms to make a smack that echoed, and they followed. And he looked back once and gave me the smallest smile like a dad, leaving his kid at school on the first day. "You'll be okay." And then he slipped behind the next bend, and I never saw him again. And that's the place in the story where people want an answer. They want to know if he died a hero, or if he made it to a barn with a water pump and a can of peaches, because that's how our brains fight the dark. But all I have is the math of sound, and the time we got from the noise he made with his life. We reached the soccer fields, and the fence on the south side was half pulled down like someone had tried to rip it free with a truck and given up. I gave Lily a knee and pushed her through, and then Kendra, and then her mom and I followed and caught my jeans and left a strip of blue denim waving like a flag, and we crossed 5 fields in a crouch, cutting corners, staying off the painted lines, because paint squeaks under shoes if you're unlucky, and at the far end the maintenance road rose to a small hill, and when we crested it the town changed underneath us, not into safety, into a map I could finally read, because quarantine trucks made a spine along county line, and the strip malls were strip ghosts, and 2 plumes of smoke wrote the words "too late" across the sky, and far down the highway a black helicopter hung, without moving like a comma, in a sentence waiting for a word, and a voice drifted up from the valley, not the bullhorn this time, a human one. "We have water and a doctor," followed by, "We can help children," followed by a chorus of "Please don't make noise." That would have been funny if it wasn't the saddest fact of our day. And Kendra looked at me, and I looked at her, and we didn't say what we were both thinking, that every promise in that valley was bait, whether the people making them intended it to be or not. Good intentions are loud. The rules had changed, and so had the ways good people die. And I thought about cars and refused them. I thought about houses and refused them. I thought about the school, because schools are built for bad days and have doors that lock and water fountains and maps on walls and roofs with hatches, and I chose height. I chose lines of sight. I chose the place Lily knew how to navigate in the dark because of fire drills, and I said, "We're going to the middle school, South Hill, the one with the blue eagle." And Lily nodded because she could see it in her mind, and because she wanted a hallway she recognized more than she wanted. Whatever help was promising help through a megaphone, and we walked, not hopeful, not doomed, just different, with our weight rolled onto the balls of our feet, and our laces tucked, and our pockets empty of keys, because keys jingle, and our sentences short, because words carry, and our eyes up, because roofs matter now. And I felt the old world slide off me like a jacket too heavy for what comes next. And I'm not going to tell you I became a new man, or a worse one, in those 20 minutes, because change doesn't care about speeches. It cared that I stepped around a sprinkler head without kicking it. It cared that when Lily's zipper started to sing, I pinched it between 2 fingers to deaden the little teeth. It cared that when a crow landed on a goalpost and cawed like a car alarm, we froze and counted to 60 and let the air go quiet again. And when we reached the service entrance of the school and found the door chained but the gym vent loose, we didn't complain about locked doors or curse anyone who tried to keep vandals out last month. We pushed the vent and slid through the metal throat into a new set of hallways, and I stood straight, and for the first time all day I wasn't thinking about death. I was thinking about rules, not the old ones about dues and trash, and whether you can have a 6-foot fence. The new ones, and I wrote them on the inside of my head the way I write on my whiteboard when the world makes no sense. Rule 1, noise is blood. Rule 2, height is time. Rule 3, help is a magnet. Rule 4, if you wait for proof you're late. Rule 5, the first neighborhood is falling, and if we don't change, we're the second, and I don't know what I'll have to do tomorrow to keep us out of that line, but I know I'll do it, and I know I'll hate parts of myself for it, and I know I'll underline it anyway, because that's who I am now, the man who underlines and moves. And we walked into the dim gym that smelled like rubber and dust and summer, and for one long breath the blue eagle on the wall looked like a promise, not hope, not doom. Just a bird that knows how to ride thermals when the ground is a mess, and we closed the vent behind us and sat on the bleachers and didn't speak because quiet was love now. And from the hill, the helicopter finally moved, and the loudspeaker said something we couldn't catch. And somewhere down there, someone made a noise and paid for it. And up here, we wrote our names smaller and the new rules bigger. And that's the road ahead.